The bottle shattered against the wall like a gunshot in the dead of night, shards of glass raining down like brittle stars, and I froze in the doorway, heart slamming against my ribs. "You think you can just waltz in here and play house with my life?" Anthony's voice cracked like thunder, slurred but sharp enough to cut, his eyes wild under the harsh kitchen bulb. I'd come to crash at my brother Christopher's cramped Brooklyn apartment after a brutal shift at the diner, expecting nothing but a lumpy couch and leftover pizza. Not this hurricane of a man, my brother's roommate, unraveling right in front of me like he'd been holding back a storm for years. I backed up a step, the splintered wood of the floor creaking under my sneakers, but Anthony's gaze locked on mine, accusatory and raw, as if I'd been the one to pull the pin on his grenade of a life. "Who the hell are you?" he snarled, swaying on his feet, the whiskey on his breath thick enough to choke a room. Christopher wasn't even there, out on some late-night delivery run for his gig economy hell. And here I was, 24 and wide-eyed, staring down the barrel of a stranger's meltdown, wondering if this was the night my safe, straight-laced world finally cracked open. That crash had yanked me from the half-sleep I'd clawed into on the sagging couch, the kind where dreams bleed into the hum of the city outside. Honking taxis, distant sirens, the eternal pulse of New York that never lets you forget you're alive, even when you wish you weren't. I'd driven up from Philly that afternoon, the turnpike a blur of gray skies and fast food wrappers, chasing a weekend away from the ghosts of my own apartment. Unpaid bills stacked like accusations on the kitchen counter, the empty side of the bed where Jake used to leave his coffee mug, and the nagging echo of our last fight, the one that ended with him calling me too much before slamming the door on our 2-year nothing. Christopher had texted me that morning, "Crash here, bro, roomie's cool. Beers on me, . And I jumped at it, because what else was there? Another Saturday scrolling Grindr profiles that ghosted by morning, or nursing a beer alone while pretending the ache in my chest was just indigestion. But now, as Anthony lurched toward me, his flannel shirt untucked and stained with what looked like spilled bourbon, I regretted every mile. He was taller than I'd clocked from the quick glance earlier that evening, broad shoulders from whatever blue-collar grind he did, dark hair falling in messy waves over a forehead creased with too many unspoken worries. Christopher had mentioned him in passing once or twice. Anthony's solid. Works construction. Keeps the place from falling apart. But solid guys didn't smash bottles and spit venom like this. "Answer me," he demanded, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper that sent a shiver down my spine. Not fear, exactly, but something sharper, like the edge of a secret you weren't supposed to taste. "I'm Alex," I said, keeping my hands visible, palms up like I was approaching a cornered animal. "Christopher's brother. He said it was cool if I stayed the night." The words hung there, absurd in the tension, and for a split second, Anthony's face crumpled, rage giving way to something haunted, like I'd just named the demon chasing him. "Brother," he echoed, the word bitter on his tongue, and he laughed, a hollow bark that echoed off the peeling wallpaper. He staggered back against the counter, knocking over a stack of takeout menus, and slid down to the floor, knees to his chest. The fight drained out of him like air from a punctured tire, leaving just this wrecked shell of a man, head in his hands. I hesitated, the smart part of me screaming to bolt for the door, call an Uber, and let Christopher deal with his own mess. But the other part, the one that had spent years patching up my own fractures after Dad walked out and Mom buried herself in church potlucks to forget, couldn't just leave him there. I stepped over the glass, careful not to crunch it underfoot, and crouched a few feet away. The apartment smelled like stale smoke and regret, the kind that clings to thrift store furniture and unwashed dreams. "Hey," I said softly, "you want to talk about it? Or, I can make coffee. Christopher's got that cheap Folgers stash." He lifted his head, eyes bloodshot and piercing blue, like chips of summer sky trapped in a winter storm. For a moment, he just stared, as if trying to decide if I was real or some whiskey-fueled hallucination. Then, "Fuck coffee," he muttered, but there was no bite left. "Just sit, if you're going to be here." So I did. We sat on that grimy kitchen floor amid the wreckage, the city thrumming beyond the fire escape like an indifferent heartbeat. He didn't say much at first, just nursed the last dregs from a hidden flask, his fingers trembling slightly as he passed it my way. I took a swig, the burn grounding me, and that's when the dam cracked. She left, he said finally, voice raw as sandpaper. Lena, after 3 years, said I'm not all in, whatever the hell that means. He spat the words like they were poison, but his eyes, God, those eyes, betrayed the lie. It wasn't just anger, it was devastation, the kind that hollows you out and leaves you grasping at shadows. I nodded, because what else could I do? I'd been there, in the wreckage of Jake walking away, telling me I was too emotional for a guy who claimed to want real. Sucks, I offered, lame but honest. What happened? Fight. Anthony snorted, rubbing a hand over his stubbled jaw. More like the truth finally caught up. She's been pushing for marriage, kids, the whole white picket fence bullshit. And I can't. He trailed off, staring at the floor like it held the answers. The air thickened, charged with the weight of what he wasn't saying, and I felt it then. That pull, magnetic and dangerous, the one that whispers this could be something even when every alarm in your head is blaring red. We talked, or he did, mostly, until the flask ran dry and the first hints of dawn smudged the skyline purple. He told me about growing up in a Rust Belt town outside Buffalo, where men like his dad worked the steel mills till their backs gave out and their dreams rusted alongside. Christopher gets it, he said, glancing at the clock. He's the only one who knows. Parts of it. Parts. The word lingered, heavy with implication. By the time Christopher stumbled in at 6 a.m., reeking of exhaust and cheap tacos, Anthony had passed out on the couch, his head lolling at an angle that made him look almost peaceful. I crashed in the spare room, more like a glorified closet with a futon, and woke to the smell of burnt toast, my body aching from the floor and my mind replaying Anthony's confessions like a scratched record. Christopher clapped me on the back over breakfast, oblivious or pretending to be. Heard you met Tony last night. Dude's got demons, but he's family. Don't let the drama scare you off. Family. Yeah, right. As I shoveled eggs into my mouth, stealing glances at Anthony nursing a hangover in the bathroom doorway, towel slung low on his hips, I wondered what kind of family this was shaping up to be. The kind that breaks you open, maybe. The kind I'd been running from my whole life. The weekend blurred from there. Lazy afternoons wandering Williamsburg's graffiti-streaked streets, hitting dive bars where the jukebox spat out Springsteen and the beers flowed cold and forgiving. Anthony sobered up quick, his charm surfacing like sunlight after rain. Quick wit, easy laugh, the way he'd sling an arm around Christopher's shoulders during a Knicks game rant, calling him bro, with a warmth that made my chest tighten. But with me, it was different. Charged glances over pool tables, his knee brushing mine under the sticky bar top. Apologies murmured low for the asshole show that first night. You're good people, Alex, he'd say, and I'd nod, pretending my pulse wasn't racing, pretending I wasn't cataloging the freckles across his nose or the way his smile crooked when he thought no one was looking. By Sunday, the lines blurred. We ditched Christopher for a walk along the East River, the skyline jagged against a cotton candy sunset, fairies cutting wakes like sighs. Anthony bought us hot dogs from a cart, mustard dripping, onions sharp, and we sat on a bench, feet dangling over the water, talking about everything and nothing. You ever feel like you're living someone else's script? He asked, voice soft against the lap of waves. I admitted the Jake fallout, how I'd spent months questioning if love was just a con job peddled by Hallmark. He listened, really listened, his hand finding mine in the space between us, not grabbing, just there, fingers interlacing like they'd always known the way. That touch lingered, electric, as we wandered back through the twilight streets, laughter bubbling up over stupid stories. His first construction site fumble, my epic fail at a family Thanksgiving where I'd outed myself accidentally with a too honest toast. Wait, he started, stopping under a street lamp's glow, and I braced for the recoil, the awkward pivot most straight guys make. But Anthony just squeezed my hand tighter. Good for you, man. Takes guts. No pity, no probe, just acceptance, warm as the summer air clinging to our skin. We didn't kiss that night, or the next when I extended my stay because work's flexible. But the pull grew, a current under the surface, pulling us towards something inevitable. Christopher noticed, shooting me side eyes over morning coffee, but he said nothing. Maybe because he saw the spark, or maybe because he knew Anthony's secrets ran deeper than a roommate squabble. Secrets like the photo on Anthony's nightstand. Him and Lena at some beach, arms around each other, but his smile forced, eyes distant. Or the way he'd flinch at Christopher's casual mentions of settling down, like the words were barbed wire. It built slow, that tension, like thunderheads gathering over the Hudson. One night, after a brutal rain that turned the streets to rivers, we holed up with a six-pack and a bootleg copy of Thelma and Louise. Christopher out cold from a double shift. Anthony's commentary cut sharp and funny, his thigh pressed against mine on the couch, heat seeping through denim. When the credits rolled, the room heavy with unspoken, he turned to me, breath warm on my neck. "Alex," he whispered, and it was a plea, a confession, his lips brushing mine tentative, tasting of hops and hesitation. I kissed back, soft at first, then deeper, hands finding the nape of his neck, the world narrowing to the salt of his skin, the hitch in his breath. It wasn't fireworks. It was a quiet unraveling, two souls recognizing the map they'd both been lost on. We pulled apart, gasping, foreheads together, and he murmured, "I've never. Not like this. Not with a guy." The words hung, fragile, and I held him there, whispering it was okay, we could figure it out slow. But secrets have a way of festering, and by midweek, the first crack showed. Christopher cornered me in the hallway, face stormy. "What's going on with you and Tony?" "He's not. He's got baggage, Alex. Lena's coming back next weekend. They're trying again." My stomach dropped, the hallway spinning. Trying again? After the bottle, the confessions? Anthony hadn't mentioned it, not once. Betrayal tasted like ash, sharp and choking, and I stormed out into the night, rain soaking me to the bone, wondering if I'd just been the rebound, the experiment, the fool who thought vulnerability meant truth. The rain hammered down like it had a personal grudge, turning the Brooklyn sidewalks into slick mirrors that reflected my fractured face back at me, eyes puffy from unshed tears, hair plastered like I'd lost a fight with a hurricane. I walked for blocks, no destination, just the burn in my lungs and the roar in my ears drowning out Christopher's words. Trying again, as if 3 years of on again, off again wasn't enough to call it a habit, a crutch. As if I hadn't spent the last nights tangled in Anthony's hesitant touches, mapping the contours of his doubts with my fingertips, believing, stupidly, desperately, that we were building something real from the ruins. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Christopher's name lighting up the screen, but I silenced it, shoving the thing deep into my jeans. What could he say? "Sorry, bro, Tony's confused." Straight guy panic, happens all the time. Yeah, I'd seen it before. The bi-curious hookups in college that fizzled into just experimenting, leaving you hollowed out and questioning your own worth. But this felt different, deeper, because Anthony hadn't just kissed me. He'd looked at me like I was the first clear breath he'd taken in years. Or maybe that was the lie I told myself to sleep at night. I ended up at a 24-hour diner on Atlantic Avenue, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who call you hon without meaning it. Ordered black coffee and a slice of pie I didn't touch, staring out at the storm-lashed street where cabs splashed through puddles like reluctant confessions. Hours ticked by, the sky lightening to a bruised gray, and still no word from Anthony. Part of me hoped he'd chase me down, soaked and sorry, spilling the truth under the marquee lights. The other part, the one scarred by Jake's ghosting texts and Dad's radio silence after the divorce, knew better. Men like that don't chase, they retreat. By noon, I dragged myself back to the apartment, keys shaking in the lock, half praying it would be empty. It wasn't. Anthony was in the kitchen, brewing fresh coffee, his back to me as he stirred in sugar with mechanical precision. He turned slow, like he'd been waiting, and the sight of him, hair still bedrumpled, eyes shadowed, twisted the knife. "Alex," he breathed, stepping forward, but I held up a hand, the universal stop sign. "Don't." My voice cracked, sharper than I intended, and he froze, mug halfway to his lips. "Christopher told me. About Lena. You're getting back together." The words landed like punches, each one sucking the air from the room, and I watched the color drain from his face, guilt etching lines around his mouth. "It's not," he started, setting the mug down with a clatter. "It's complicated. She's family, Alex. Grew up with her. Our folks are best friends. If I bail for good, it's not just us, its holidays ruined, whispers in church, the whole small town fallout. He raked a hand through his hair, pacing now, the floorboards groaning under his weight. But you. Shit, what we had this week, it's the first time I've felt. He trailed off, eyes pleading, and damn if it didn't stir the empathy I'd buried under the hurt. Felt what? I demanded, stepping closer despite myself, the scent of his soap, clean, piney, hitting me like a drug. Real? Because that's what it was for me. Not some side quest while you figure out your straight guy midlife crisis. His flinch was visceral, like I'd slapped him. It's not a crisis. I've known since high school, okay? The way I'd watch the guys in gym, heart pounding, telling myself it was nothing. Then Lena, sweet, safe Lena, comes along, and it's easy to pretend. Build a life that fits the script. He stopped pacing, close enough now that I could see the pulse jumping in his throat. But you crashed in here, all fire and honesty, and suddenly the script's bullshit. I want this. Us. But I can't burn it all down overnight. The room spun, his words a whirlwind of half-truths and heartaches. I wanted to believe him, to grab his shirt and pull him close, rewrite the ending where we ran off to some anonymous city block and started fresh. But the anger simmered, hot and righteous. You should have told me, I said, voice low, before you kissed me like it meant forever. I know. He reached for my arm, tentative, and I let him. Weak, maybe, but human. His thumb traced a circle on my wrist, grounding, and for a moment, we just stood there, the rain pattering against the window like hesitant applause. Give me time, please. Christopher burst in then, dripping from a bodega run, arms loaded with bagels and the Sunday Times. He clocked the tension immediately, eyebrows shooting up. Whoa, everything good. His eyes flicked between us, protective big brother mode kicking in, and I saw it, the unspoken pact between them, the way he'd shielded Anthony's cracks from the world. Yeah, Anthony said quick, dropping my arm like it burned. Just talking shop. The lie hung thin, but Christopher let it slide, tossing me a bagel with a wink that said we'll hash this later. We ate in strained silence, the front page screaming about some Wall Street scandal, but my mind was elsewhere, plotting escape routes, wondering if I could Uber back to Philly before the hurt calcified. The days stretched after that, a fragile truce laced with landmines. Anthony pulled back, polite but distant, morning hellos over cereal, evenings vanishing to work late, that smelled like avoidance. I'd catch him watching me, though, from across the living room during movie nights, his gaze lingering a beat too long on my neck, my hands. It drove me crazy, that push-pull, the way he'd brush past me in the hall, body heat lingering like a promise deferred. Christopher tried mediating in his ham-fisted way. Beers on the fire escape, gruff advice about not pushing Tony too hard. He's got ghosts. Ghosts. Plural. I pressed once, late one night when the apartment was still, Christopher half asleep on the couch. What's his deal? The full story. He sighed, cracking a knuckle. Grew up evangelical man. Dad's a deacon or some shit. Tony came out to him at 17. Bad scene. Fist fight, disownment threats. He buried it deep after that. Latched onto Lena as cover. She's no dummy. Knows he's conflicted but loves him anyway. Or thinks she does. Christopher's eyes softened, brotherly concern etching his face. He's trying, Alex. For real. But if you bail now, it'll crush him. Crush him. As if I wasn't already pulverized, waking to empty texts and the phantom weight of Anthony's hand in mine. I stayed, masochistic fool that I was, filling days with freelance graphic gigs on my laptop and nights wandering the city solo, Bryant Park's holiday lights mocking my solitude, the village's rainbow flags a reminder of what I'd almost touched. One evening, buzzed on cheap wine from a corner store, I texted Anthony. Rooftop? Need air. He showed 10 minutes later, six-pack in hand, the city sprawled glittering below like a bed of diamonds. We didn't talk about Lena at first, just bullshitted about baseball, the Mets' eternal choke, the way New York's grind chews you up and spits you out fancy. But the wine loosened tongues, and soon he was spilling. The pressure from his mom, calls laced with Bible verses and veiled pleas to pray it away. She doesn't know about you, he admitted, voice tight. Can't. Not yet. The omission stung, fresh as the first betrayal, but I swallowed it, leaning against the railing, our shoulders touching. Then when? I asked, the skyline blurring through unshed tears. When do I stop being the dirty secret? He turned, cupping my face, thumbs rough against my cheeks. You're not. God, Alex, you're the only honest thing I've got. His kiss was fierce then, rain-fresh and desperate, bodies aligning under the sodium glow. We clung there, the world falling away, and for that stolen hour, it was enough. Romance in the raw, two hearts defying the script. But reality's a bitch with a long memory. Lena arrived Friday, all smiles and takeout from that Italian place on Court Street, her laugh bright as she hugged Anthony tight. I watched from the kitchen doorway, gut twisting, as she pecked his cheek, oblivious or willfully blind. Christopher shot me an apologetic grimace, but I played it cool. Small talk about traffic from Jersey, compliments on her hair. Inside, I was screaming, the hypocrisy a blade twisting slow. That night, as they retreated to his room, door cracked just enough to let murmurs escape. I slipped out, wandering to the river again, the water black and unforgiving. Betrayal layered on betrayal, my own for staying, his for stringing me along. By dawn, resolve hardened. Time to go, before the lies swallowed us whole. The ferry horn blared across the water like a mournful wail, cutting through the fog that clung to the East River like regret refusing to lift. I sat on the edge of the pier, legs dangling over the chop, a half-smoked cigarette burning down to my fingers. Bad habit picked up in the Jake days. One I'd sworn off, but here it was, acrid comfort in the gray morning light. Lena's car had peeled out hours ago, taillights fading into the pre-dawn haze. Her goodbye hug to me perfunctory, scented with vanilla and victory. She'd chattered about wedding plans over dinner. Nothing set, just ideas, while Anthony nodded along, his smiles brittle as autumn leaves. I'd excused myself early, claiming a headache, but really it was the bile rising, the suffocation of watching him play the role he'd mastered. Sleep evaded me after, the futon a torture rack of what-ifs. By 4 a.m., I'd packed my duffel quiet as a thief, scribbling a note for Christopher, heading back early. Thanks for the couch. Tell Tony. Nothing. Just go well. Cowardly. Yeah. But facing him in the light of her perfume on his collar? No. Better to ghost. Let the silence say what pride wouldn't let me voice. I slipped out the back, fire escape rattling under my boots, the city awakening in fits, bakers firing ovens, joggers pounding pavement like they could outrun their demons. The walk to the subway was a blur, mind replaying the rooftop kiss on loop, his hands in my hair, the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer. Lies, all of it, or half-truths. Worse, the kind that dangle hope just to snatch it back. By the time I hit Penn Station, the platform a cattle call of commuters, resolve cracked. One text. That's all. Leaving now. Wish you the script you want. Sent before I could overthink. Then phone on airplane mode. Ticket in hand for the 6:15 Acela. The train rattled south, Pennsylvania unfolding in smears of farmland and billboards. Jesus saves. Divorce? Call now. Irony thick as the coffee I chugged from a styrofoam cup. I tried distractions, sketching logos on a napkin, earbuds blasting the Nationals' melancholy croon, but Anthony's face haunted every frame. Those blue eyes, stormy with want, now clouded by obligation. Was it love with Lena, or just inertia? And me, collateral damage in his coming-out war, or the catalyst he couldn't afford? Philly welcomed me with indifferent drizzle, my apartment a tomb of dust bunnies and unopened mail. I crashed hard, dreamless till noon, waking to Christopher's voicemail. Dude, what the hell? Tony's a wreck. Saw your note. Bolted out the door like the place was on fire. Call me. Wreck. The word twisted sympathy with fury. How dare he grieve what he'd chosen to kill? I ignored it, diving into work. Mock-ups for a craft beer client. Pixels blurring as the afternoon bled to evening. But by nightfall, the walls closed in. Jake's old hoodie mocking from the closet, the bed vast and accusatory. A knock shattered the quiet, insistent, like it knew my secrets. Heart slamming, I yanked the door open to Christopher, disheveled in a Mets cap and hoodie, pizza box in hand like a peace offering. Road trip solidarity, he said, pushing past without invite. You're not holing up like a hermit crab, bro spill. We ate on the floor, greasy slices cooling as I unloaded. The kisses, the confessions, the gut punch of Lena's return. Christopher listened, nodding slow, no judgment in his eyes, just the steady anchor he'd always been since we were kids trading comic books under the covers. "Tony's messed up," he said finally, wiping sauce from his chin. "Called his mom last night after you left. Bad. Real bad. Screaming match over the phone. Something about sins of the flesh. Hung up on her, then punched a hole in the drywall." He winced, rubbing his own knuckles in memory. "He's scared, Alex. Of losing everything. But you walking? That lit a fire. He's driving down tonight." The pizza turned to lead in my stomach. "Don't. I can't. It's done, Chris." He chose. Did he? My brother leaned forward, eyes sharp. Or did fear choose for him? Give the guy a shot to own it. He stood, clapping my shoulder. "I'm crashing here. You decide. Decide." As if it were that simple. Flip a switch, forgive the betrayal, ignore the scar it'd leave. But when Anthony's truck rumbled up at midnight, headlights slicing the rain-slick street, my resolve wavered. He knocked soft, almost apologetic, and when I opened the door, there he was, rain-soaked, eyes red-rimmed, a bouquet of bodega daisies clutched like a lifeline. "Alex," he choked, voice wrecked. "I fucked up. Let me in." Against every screaming instinct, I did. We ended up on the couch, daisies wilting on the coffee table, his story pouring out in fits, the call to his mom, her venom. "You're throwing away salvation for a phase?" The epiphany in the cab ride down, how losing me crystallized the cage he'd built. "Lena knows," he said, voice trembling. "Told her everything this morning. She cried, slapped me, but she gets it. Said she's been waiting for this for years, but won't chain me to a lie." Tears tracked his cheeks, unashamed, and I brushed them away, thumb lingering on his jaw. "It's not just coming out," he continued, grasping my hand. "It's you. The way you see me, not broken, just human. I want that. Us. If you'll have a mess like me." The vulnerability gutted me, anger melting into ache. We talked till dawn, raw, unfiltered, about fears, futures, the messy middle where love lives. No grand gestures, just honesty, his head on my shoulder as the rain eased to mist. When he kissed me then, it was different, sure, steady, a vow sealed in the quiet of my living room. Weeks blurred into a tentative rhythm. Anthony shuttled between Brooklyn and Philly, weekends tangled in my sheets, chaste, but close, hands exploring boundaries, hearts catching up. Christopher played wingman, hosting family dinners that skirted the edges of normalcy. Lena even showed once, awkward but kind, toasting to new chapters. But shadows lingered. Anonymous calls from Anthony's dad, voicemails laced with scripture and shame, whispers from old construction buddies, jobs drying up on rumors. "Faggot," scrawled on his truck one morning, the word a sucker punch that left him shaking in my arms. We fought too, the ugly kind, born of exhaustion. Me snapping at his hesitations, him retreating into silence, the echo of past betrayals amplifying every slight. One night, after a voicemail from his mom, "Come home, son. Pray with us. This devil's hold." He snapped, accusing me of pushing too fast. "You don't get it, Alex. My whole world's crumbling, and you're acting like it's a rom-com montage." I fired back, hurt flaying me open. "Then go. Run back to the script if it's easier than fighting for us." He stormed out, truck peeling into the night, and I collapsed against the door, sobs racking me silent. Hours later, Christopher's text, "He's at my place. Give him space, but he's yours if you want him." Want him? God. Yes, flaws, fractures and all. Dawn found me on his doorstep, apology on my lips, and when he pulled me inside, it was a reckoning. Promises whispered fierce to weather the storms together. But life doesn't do neat bows. The climax hit like a freight train that fall. Anthony's dad showing up unannounced at the Philly site, Bible in hand, flanked by two church elders. Words escalated quick, pleas turning to shouts. "You're killing your mother with this abomination." Anthony held firm, voice steady for the first time. "I'm gay, Dad. And happy. That's the gospel truth." A shove, a swing, fists flew, blood on concrete, sirens wailing as Christopher and I raced from the diner shift. In the ER waiting room, Fluorescent hell. Anthony, stitched up and bruised but unbroken, we faced the fallout. His dad disowned him on the spot. No son of mine. The words a guillotine. Anthony shattered then, not with rage but grief, curling into me as monitors beeped. Lost him, he whispered, and I held tighter, murmuring of the family we were building, one of choice, not blood. Rebuilding took grit. Therapy sessions in a cramped Center City office, where Anthony unpacked decades of shame, job hunts amid whispers, landing steady work at a queer-friendly firm upstate. Me? I learned patience, the art of loving without possession, our nights now rituals of quiet strength, cooking pasta disasters, walks under autumn leaves, hands linked defiant. Yet doubt crept in winters, cold as the Schuylkill ice. A letter arrived one January eve, his mom's handwriting, tentative. I saw a rainbow pin on your Facebook. Praying for clarity, but I miss my boy. Anthony read it trembling, then burned it in the sink, ashes swirling like ghosts. Not yet, he said, but his eyes begged forgiveness I couldn't grant for hurts not mine to heal. Spring brought thaw, tentative blooms. We drove to Fire Island for a weekend getaway. Christopher's wedding gift, cheeky bastard, beaches wide and welcoming, waves crashing like applause. There, under a canopy of stars, Anthony dropped to one knee. Not proposal, but promise, a simple silver band, etched with us. No scripts, he said, sliding it on. Just this. Tears blurred the horizon, joy fierce and fragile. But as we walked hand in hand back to the cabin, a call shattered it. Lena, voice breaking. Tony, it's bad. Your dad's had a stroke. Heart attack after the fight. He's asking for you. The world tilted, guilt and grief colliding. Anthony went white, clutching the phone. I did this, he whispered, and in that moment, the betrayal reversed. Not his to me, but fate's cruel twist, forcing a choice between healing and haunting. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and wilted hope, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry hornets, casting harsh shadows on the monitor's green glow. Anthony's dad lay there, a husk of the towering figure from old photos, tubes snaking from his arms, face slack and ashen, the Bible on the bedside table dog-eared and accusing. We arrived in a blur of highway miles, Anthony white-knuckled on the wheel, me silent shotgun, Christopher trailing in his own car with promises of backup if it goes south. It had gone south the moment Lena's call pierced the night. Stroke, they said, brought on by stress, the kind that fells oaks in a gale. And the gale? Us. The unspoken indictment hung thick as the beeping heart rate, every pulse a reminder of the chasm Anthony's truth had carved. He hadn't spoken much on the drive, just gripped the band on his finger like a talisman, jaw set in that stubborn line I'd come to read as fear masked as resolve. What if he dies hating me, he'd murmured once, voice cracking over the whoosh of passing semis. I'd squeezed his thigh, words failing. How do you console a man torn between blood and becoming? Now, standing in the doorway, Anthony looked small, the boy who'd once hidden bruises under long sleeves, and my heart ached with the injustice of it all. The nurse nodded us in, her smile professional pity, and Anthony approached slow, like the bed might swallow him. Dad, he said, voice barely above the machines. No response at first, just shallow breaths, eyes fluttering half open, unfocused. Then, a rasp. Tony? Weak, but there, laced with something softer than rage. Anthony sank into the chair, hand hovering before taking his father's, knotted veins, calluses from years of mill work, a lifeline across the void. We talked, or Anthony did, halting at first, words tumbling like confessions in a confessional. The stroke had stolen edges, leaving a man stripped bare, regrets spilling unfiltered. I was wrong, he wheezed, eyes locking on his son's. Pushed you into a mold. Afraid you'd break like I did. Anthony's breath hitched, tears carving tracks down his stubble. Mom told me, after you called. About the pin, the man. A glance my way, tentative, and I stood frozen, the weight of judgment I'd braced for dissolving into. Nothing. Just a tired old man, grasping for grace. I'm with Alex, Anthony said, chin lifting. I love him. That's not changing. The declaration hung, bold in the sterile air, and his dad nodded. Slow, pained, but real. Good, he murmured. Be happy, son. That's enough. No sermons, no fire, just absolution, fragile as tissue. Anthony broke then, folding over the bed, sobs muffled against the blanket, and I slipped out, giving them the moment, tears hot on my cheeks in the hallway. Lena found me there, vending machine coffee steaming in her hands. 2 cups, one extended like an olive branch. Heard the whole story from Chris, she said, voice steady but eyes red. Sucks, huh? Loving someone who can't love back the way you need. No bitterness, just weary understanding, the kind forged in letting go. We sat on plastic chairs, strangers bonded by shared wreckage, and she told me about the years, nights Anthony stared at ceilings, days pretending for crowds. I held on 'cause I thought I could fix him, she admitted. But you? You didn't try. You just were. Her smile was small, genuine. Take care of him, Alex. He deserves that. The days that followed were a vigil, rotating shifts, Christopher cracking bad jokes to lighten the air, Mom, Anthony's mom, arriving tearful, her hug fierce and wordless, a silent welcome in the squeeze. She baked pies for the waiting room, apple crisp crumbling under forks, apologies baked into every bite. I was blind. She whispered to me one afternoon, flour-dusted hands clasping mine. Prayers are for asking, not demanding. Forgive an old fool. I did, easy as breathing, because grace isn't hoarded, it's passed like a torch. His dad rallied slow, a stubborn fighter, transferred to rehab in Buffalo where autumn painted the hills gold. Anthony visited weekly, drives up I-90, a ritual of reconciliation. Awkward silences giving way to stories, fishing tales from boyhood lakes, laughter tentative but growing. Me? I tagged along sometimes, outsider no more, accepted with nods, and passed the salt at family dinners. The disownment scar faded, not gone but scarred over, a reminder of survival. Back in Philly, life stitched forward. Anthony landed that upstate gig, project manager for eco-builds, ironic poetry in constructing from green foundations, and we made the leap, subletting my place, pooling for a 1-bedroom in Fishtown, exposed brick and creaky floors that echoed our steps like home. Mornings were coffee shared over the sink, his lips on my temple. Evenings, takeout on the fire escape, city lights winking approval. Conflicts lingered, arguments over his long hours, my freelance droughts, but they resolved in talks, not tantrums, vulnerability our glue. The high drama ebbed, replaced by quiet depths. The day he met my extended family at Aunt Rita's Easter spread, rainbow flag pinned proud to his jacket, no flinches, just toasts to the one who makes my brother smile. Or the night storms hit, thunder rattling windows, and we huddled close, his heartbeat my lullaby. Romance wove through the mundane. Notes in lunch bags, miss your chaos, surprise tickets to a Broad Street Philharmonic, violins swelling as he mouthed I love you in the dim. But the unexpected crest came that summer, heat wave sticky as secrets unearthed. A letter arrived, certified, from a lawyer in Buffalo. His dad's will, revised post-stroke. Anthony read it pale, then laughing through tears. The mill house, left to him. For the son who built his own foundation. Inside, tucked in the envelope, a note in shaky script. Proud of you, boy. Build true. Closure, unbidden, the final piece slotting into place. We drove up that weekend, house dusty but sturdy, lake view unchanged. Standing on the dock, sun dipping low, Anthony turned to me, band glinting. Marry me. Not a question, a certainty. I said yes, kissing him fierce, waves lapping agreement. The wedding was small, backyard in Fishtown, Christopher officiating with vows he wrote half-drunk on whiskey wisdom. Vows of endurance, through betrayals mended, misunderstandings bridged, the hard choices that carve souls deeper. Lena came, maid of honor in a sundress, toasting with champagne flutes, to messy loves, the best kind. His mom cried happy tears, Dad, recovering, cane in hand, clapped slow, eyes bright. It's not fairy tale perfect. We're human, prone to slips. Nights doubt whispers old fears, mornings we choose again. But in the quiet after, his head on my chest, I feel it. The humanistic heart of us, forged in fire, tender and truce. Love isn't absence of storm. It's the hand held through it, the story we write together, page by unflinching page. And on rainy nights, when thunder rolls like that first Brooklyn crash, we laugh, because we know we've turned wreckage to wonder, one honest heartbeat at a time.